Praise the Lord, we're back for another one. We have a bit of a topic for you guys to tune in to. It's a lot of mess that's happening in this world right now, and I think people are conflicted about it, but I have my same special guest here who's going to be discussing this topic with me. We've got Fato in the building.
How we doing,
Praise the
everyone?
Lord, what's going
Good
on?
to be back. How we doing?
Okay, so there's a lot of conflict with this topic.
Yeah.
I mean, with what's happening in the world right now. So for those of you who don't know, who've probably been living under a rock, Israel, Palestine, they're at war. Hamas, the government authorities for Palestine right now, they are waging war with Israel. And so I think the topic that we want to talk about today is how does this affect us, the world, Christians,
yeah.
everything else in between? What are the details? What do we know so far? And what, I guess, maybe things that we might think could be happening in the future. You know what I mean? So before we talk about that, those who are just tuning into the live, let me just double check that this live is good to go. If you guys can hear us, just give us a bit of a shout out if you're tuning in right now. How are we going? So we had a funny night, on Friday.
Yeah.
Maybe we can kickstart with letting people know how our funny night was on Friday, you know what I mean? So,
but it was funny, but we said it at the start. We may be getting some interesting characters.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You know, off the bat it happened, you know. But it was good. It was good in a way. God bless those who shared their thoughts about how things went. So it was interesting.
Before you get onto that, so if you're just tuning in, like this video, please, if you can, on YouTube and on Facebook. This will help the algorithm to push the content out further as much as possible so that we can get this into as many ears, giving our biblical perspective on things. And whether you disagree or agree, more than welcome to share that in the comment section below. So Friday, so just before we get into it, we had a bit of a fun night on Friday. Do you want to explain a little bit on what happened?
It was, so like, I don't know where I was going with the message. I can't remember exactly. But then I think I dropped the bombshell.
What was the bombshell?
I mentioned the community, the alphabetical community.
The alphabetical community. You know, the very thing that gets you cancelled nowadays. If you talk about them in a negative shade of light, then you get cancelled.
And it's like this guy stopped and he looked and he was just saying something I couldn't hear him from the back. But it was good. We got to engage in a conversation.
You guys had a bit of a heated exchange.
It was. Yeah. It was heated, you know. I think he started to get emotional and everything. But this is what I was trying to do. Because I know maybe this bloke has had bad experiences with other Christians, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why he's very hostile and everything. And I was trying to show the guy some love. But yeah.
If you haven't yet seen the video, we'll link that in the description below. Like, there was a bit of a heated exchange there that we had, an outreach. We do that every Friday at
Fortitude
Valley. I almost forgot the name of the place. And we get a lot of characters. Shout out to our friend Jan. Is that his name?
Yes.
It's a very tall, big, masculine.
He introduced himself as Tall Jan. Tall Jan.
Tall Jan.
Yeah. So when one of the brethren asked for his name, it was like, oh, they call me Tall Jan. So
it's the tallest dude you'll ever see, and then on top of that, he's wearing high heels. In a very small piece of clothing. You know what I mean? So yeah, look, shout out to a little friend there. We're going to be preaching the gospel to you.
Yeah, one day we can have a conversation.
Because every time he walks past, it's just
high and by.
It's real quick.
Yeah.
Zooms past us, says hello to our friend Jakey a lot. So
his best friend. Best friends.
Praise the Lord. So let's get into this topic. This topic has been kind of looming for a while, I guess. There's been a build up to this war, and it's not a new one, but the devastation of what's kind of happened on October the 7th, it's been much bigger than in recent years with the conflict that's been happening. So for those who don't know, there is a conflict between Palestine and Israel, and this has been going on for decades, and it's over territory in simplistic In a simplistic, in a nutshell,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of details to this that we're not going to be able to cover on this podcast, but there's a lot of conflict that happens, that is happening between the two, between the neighboring nations. Gaza is only a very small strip of land. It's a very small strip of land. They've got about 2.3 million people. That's
population
that kind of lives there, and it's quite a dense area. You know what I mean? And so Israel, I mean, the history goes way back. You know what I mean? The history is about 1,400 years old ish. You reckon? About 1,400 years old.
Yeah, it's old news. The conflict. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that's happening behind the scenes, and if you don't know, I guess, a bit of the history of it, then you'll probably be a bit lost. And what this could potentially mean in the future for the world and for Christians, where do we kind of stand, and what's our view on this? So, what's your thoughts? Your initial thoughts on this?
So, with obviously exactly what you said, if you don't know your history, if you don't know what's going on, it's just going to be like another one. You know, another war.
It's another war. It's like a Ukraine-Russia kind of thing.
Exactly. It's one of those. But I think when you take a bit of a dive into it, look into the information, read into history and everything, it kind of gives you a better understanding on why it's happening and everything. So, and how it can affect us as a country, or even as the whole world in general, you know. So I think
it's a global impact.
Exactly. It's a global impact. That's a better word. I said, what did I say? Universe. But anyways, so my first thoughts, obviously the conspiracy theories comes out like, I don't know, but I'm open to different lenses out there, right? You know, obviously you have Palestine's view, you have Israel's view, but there's always going to be facts. You know, despite the different perspectives, there's always going to be facts. So I think that's what we're going to be getting into as well, into the different facts, the history, the war. So just so people can get some clarity as well. Because I know I was confused when it first happened. I was like, oh, what's going on here? And obviously with a bit of research, you kind of get to understand a bit more what's going on within the war.
I think my initial thoughts on it when I first watched it, you seen about, what was it, about 1,300 people were killed, and that's majority civilians. And you had some of the RDF, some of the army that was there as well that was killed, and that was kind of like the first line of defense, and then they were just kind of, you know, eliminated quite quickly. And then the people from that festival, we've seen, for those who haven't seen footage, it's all over YouTube. You can check it out for yourself. A lot of people are running from this festival. There's hundreds of people running from there, and they just get mowed down. A lot of killing. There's
a lot of kidnapping, raping.
A lot of kidnapping. People have been carried into Gaza as well as hostages, and they're still holding them as hostages today. And you know, people are always talking about like that's only half the media. We don't know the other side. And again, we can probably only go off what we know for now. But the conflict is much deeper than what the surface level things are that we see now. Because so the guys that's governing there, Hamas. I think that's how
you got to say it properly, yeah.
Hamas. You know, you got to use the back of the throat. So when they came into power, a lot of the Palestinians, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but because we don't have an exact figure. But there were quite a few, I'd say, that didn't agree with having them there to be the governing authority of Palestine.
So they didn't all agree to it. It wasn't unanimous. Okay,
yes, because you've also got Christian Palestinians who live there as well. It's predominantly
Islamic. Okay,
but you've got different views there as well. So and people just want, a lot of people, they just want peace. They don't want to be in the midst of war, because at the end of the day, whatever the religion may be, people don't want to be a part of the conflict. They just want to live their lives. You've got fathers who have wives and children. They don't want anything to do with it. So there are casualties on both sides. So with Hamas kind of ruling leading the charge to this attack that happened in Israel, now Israel is obviously defending itself, and then a lot of the countries have come out. You know, you got the United States, you got Australia, you got the UK, whatever. They're all coming out in defense of Israel, saying Israel has a right to defend itself. They've all got the same language. And so I think they're very careful with what they're saying, But also as well, this has caused a lot of drama throughout the world. I don't know if you've seen videos, even here in Australia where we are.
Exactly.
There are people
in Sydney.
There are rallies happening, but some of these rallies are turning into riots. And it's getting messy. It happened over in DC as well. So well, I don't know. What's your thoughts on
I've seen one in Germany, the rally in Germany about free Palestine. But it's crazy, like the videos that you see with people rallying, it's to free Palestine. Free Palestine, free Palestine. I was watching it with my little nephew. Watching a video and they're like, I think it was a Palestinian guy. They're like, why are they arresting him? Why are they taking him away? And I was like, do I have to explain to this guy what's going on with the war and everything, you know? But there's a lot of rallies going on, which is kind of, that's what made me like, I don't know, because the rallies that we see around the world, it's all for Palestine. Palestine, free Palestine. It's like,
and then I think all the nations are very, they're trying to be careful of what's happening right now because there is two sides to the story.
Always two sides.
And this has been a major conflict that's happened for decades now. And so they don't want to step on toes kind of thing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they want people to be able to, I guess, protest and have their say.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so here in Australia, they allow them to protest, but at the same time, they tell them there's no hateful speech that you can say. You can't.
There's still boundaries. There's still laws that you got to abide by.
Anti-Semitic remarks aren't tolerated as well. So there's certain things, there's certain guidelines that they're going to put into place. But I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about this.
With the rallies? Or just in general, the war in general?
In general. So this is me. This is personal experience. This is more so personal experience and not so much facts. But when I went to school, it was... I'd say it was probably 80%, maybe even more, Muslims.
Yeah.
You know, I went to school in Birong Boys.
Yeah.
And so that was predominantly like a school that was full of Muslims and you know, I had a lot of friends from there, which was good.
Yeah.
But I remember as a young kid, I don't know what year I was in. I was quite young at the time. I remember a lot of them sharing about why they hate Jews. But I never understood it.
True, yeah.
Wow. I never understood like what the conflict was, but there was one specific conversation I remember having, and again, this is just personal experience, so this doesn't determine everything. This is my own personal experience. I remember asking, why is there so much hatred towards the Jews?
Yeah,
like why is there so much pushback against them? I didn't know anything about land or anything like that, but what seemed to be the culture at the time, or you know, during school times, a lot of them just hated the Jews, but it's because they were kind of raised that way.
It's what they were taught growing up.
It's what they were taught. You know what I mean? And so when I had asked this one particular person, I had asked them about like what's the conflict kind of thing.
Yeah. And
so I remember I pushed back a little bit because again, I have no idea about any of this, what's going on. And so I asked him, so if a Jew was here now, would you shake his hand? He's like, yeah, I mean, like I'd shake his hand, but he was very hesitant. Yeah, and this is something that I remember back in school days, but the reason why I'm sharing this is because there was always, growing up in high school, there was always a lot of negative, I guess, talk about Jews.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, I didn't know I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know anything about conflicts or whatever. But it was always something in my mind, like, why is there so much negativity towards Jews? Now, you know, understanding, reading a bit of history, you know, anti-Semitism has been something that's been around for a very long time. For you could say for thousands of years. You know what I mean? So
yeah. It's
how does that tie into today? What's your thoughts?
It's like, so I've heard. This was when I was still an apprentice. This guy wasn't. He wasn't Muslim. He was. I'm pretty sure he was Croatian. His religion, I'll keep that anonymous. But anyways, he was pro-Hitler. It was pro-Hitler. He was like, Hitler should have killed all the Jews. And I was like, why is that? And remember, whether this is true or not, I'm not saying it's true. This is what I personal experience as well. He was saying that the whole thing to do with the Jews is that they go to countries, they take over that place, and they make the people in that place work like dogs. And I was
yes
like,
and no.
And I was like, oh, true. I was like, yeah, that is bad. whether I believed him or not, I don't know. But being an apprentice, it's like, oh, true. So
I think from what I read a bit in history,
mm-hmm.
especially in Hitler's time, and when the Holocaust happened, the hatred towards Jews. Because remember, at this time they've been banished from their land, so they haven't been a nation, for the longest time. Since the time of 70 AD,
mm-hmm.
or sorry, 135 AD, right? So what happens is they go into mainly the European countries and to North Africa,
mm-hmm.
and they live their life, but they're very smart people as well. You know what I mean? And they make a good living, and they you see a lot of them, they're lawyers, doctors, whatever.
Yeah,
they even help join the army, the German army, to fight against whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, sorry, was the German army or a different army? Let me get that one correct before I say that. But anyways, there was a lot of assumptions about them
mm-hmm.
because of the way that they were. And I think a lot of the wording that I remember hearing was something to do with Jewish blood. Okay. And in a nutshell, saying that it was toxic and it's going to do certain things to this world. And so basically, again, there's so much more history on this. I'm giving you a real kind of, in a bit of a nutshell.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the Germans, but there was a lot of people from different countries, in Europe, where there was a lot of anti-Semitism that happened around the world.
Gotcha.
This was over time.
Yeah.
And so I think Hitler was the only one bold enough to kind of do something about it.
Yeah.
Killing about 6 million Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that wasn't the answer to it. But that conflict there as well,
mm-hmm.
I think people need to understand the conflict that happened with Jews and neighboring countries and where they were when they were banished from the land. They went into exile. Remember, them going to exile has been throughout time.
Yeah. It's
over time, you know what I mean? And so
it's happened numerous times.
What have you heard about, what's your thoughts on the land itself?
So obviously, you have Palestine. So I remember hearing this at work, the whole argument with Jerusalem or something. Is it something about? I remember hearing it at work. Is it Palestine's or is it Israel's? It's like, whose land is it? And obviously there's always different views. It's these people say it's my land, those people say it's their land. But I think it would depend on where you stand, in the sense of, obviously you got the Jewish lens on how they believe that this is our land, and you have the Islamic world, they'll be like, no, this is our land. So with me, it's like, I don't know enough. I don't know enough to be like, this is their land or this is their land.
Well,
like right now it's Israel's.
Yeah, but I think historically as well, Israel has occupied the land a lot longer than what the Muslims have. You know what I mean? Or people of Arab nations and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They've occupied that land a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gone into bondage heaps of times and come back to the land. This is a common theme that happens amongst God's people, the Israelites. But also knowing as well that these guys didn't come until about 600 years after Christ.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so the taking of the land, they occupied it for a couple of 100 years, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even just one Arab, wasn't just one Arab nation. There was actually different Muslim empires that took over. So there was the Crusaders, then there was who defeated let me see what it says, the Mamluk, I think that's what it's called, and then the Muslim Empire, which is the Ottoman Empire. They done a takeover as well, and so they held the land for a few centuries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when Israel comes back to the land,
mm-hmm.
this is in 1948. That's only a couple of years after the Holocaust.
Yep.
And so it's a common theme that we see throughout the Bible, where you see they go through some heavy persecution or some kind of bondage,
mm-hmm.
and then God puts them in a place where it's like it's overflowing with milk and honey, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you see that happening with Joseph in his time. They go through a great famine, and then all the people his brothers that persecuted him, they went back to, they went into Egypt, and there was freedom there. And then the very next story in the book of Exodus is when they're in bondage for over 400 years,
mm-hmm.
and then Moses sets them free, and they go out from Egypt and make the exodus to the promised land, and they go back and forth, Assyrian captivity, Babylonian captivity. But nonetheless, that was their land that was promised to them. And so you see a back and forth kind of thing, like what's happening with the Israelites all the time. I think that same theme also relates to the time of Jesus, when they're in captivity they're under Rome's law, under Rome's influence for over 400 years.
But still in Jerusalem.
Still in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And then Jesus comes to set the captives free, but in a spiritual sense, in your heart, not so much. And then obviously 70 AD, that's when you see the destruction of the temple and everything else. Now the same thing is happening here. The same theme is following here, where you see 1945, I think that's the peak of when the Holocaust happens. And then only, I think about 3 years later, then you see Israelites become a nation again. Now, this is actually amazing. Let me share a bit about this, right? Because this was Bible prophecy coming to pass.
Okay.
I think one of the things that amazes me about this is when you go into Ezekiel, right? Now, let me just read a little bit from here. So, in all of history, there's never been a nation that's been scattered the way that the Jews have been, and then actually come back and formed their own independent nation again.
Gotcha. Yeah.
In all of history, that's never happened. So for God to be able to do that, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
Like you've got to understand like the biblical context and why it is a miracle. Now check this out in Ezekiel chapter 36. It says, I will take from you the nations and gather you from all the countries and bring you into your own land. And this is the chapter where it talks about, I will take a heart of stone, I'll give you a heart of flesh. The very next chapter 37, this is where it gets a bit freaky, right? You know how it talks about, and people always talk about it in church and Pentecostal churches, like, dry bones becoming, just speak life into death. And
yeah.
I guess a bit more context behind it as well. The very next chapter obviously relates to chapter 36, and it's speaking about the land of Israel, and say that this nation is dead, but I'm going to breathe life back into it.
Bring life back into Israel.
And it's amazing. Like you got to read it, like chapter 37, verse 21 to 23, or just read the whole chapter. Sorry, read the whole chapter. There, it talks about how this was a nation that had no more life in it, and he's saying, "Son of man, speak to these dry bones, speak life into it." And then flesh will come over it, then skin will come over that, and and then he explains it a bit more in later on in chapter 37, talking about how Israel will become a nation again. And this is something I'll read this part. It says, "Then say to them, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I will take the people of Israel from the nations among you, which they have gone, and will gather them from all around and bring them to their own land, and I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king over them all. They shall be no longer two nations and no longer divided into two kingdoms." You know what I mean?
It's talking about the south of how Israel was split up into two.
Yes, yes. It
nation.
will be no longer be two nations.
Two nations, yeah.
And so I think even in that, for them to come back as a nation again, following the biggest slaughter of Jews in all of history, the Holocaust, that's even more of a miracle that it happened almost immediately after that. They were seeking to eliminate Jews from the face of the earth. Yeah, and they weren't far off. Yeah, this small mustache dude, he wasn't far off. You know what I mean? But they weren't. To be honest with you, a lot of people disagreed. But there was actually a lot of people who agreed with it, but they just didn't want to be the ones who pulled the trigger. Yeah. Hitler had to be the... He was the guy that was bold enough to do it. Yeah. What are your thoughts? Try wipe him out.
So, look, just to what you were saying with all this. So, historically speaking, that's Israel's land. Historically speaking, and it's fact.
It is biblically, and even historically as well. When you look at it, they occupied that land way before the Arab nations came into it. And this is where a lot of conflict will, are these guys telling the truth? Like, there's a lot more to it. There is a lot more details to discuss. And again, we can't sit here and talk about decades and centuries of war and how it happened, because there's a lot of different leaders throughout time, and there was different agreements that happened, but then that didn't come to pass. And I don't know, it's messy, man.
I only say that because that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the big war is about. You know, that's why you have Hamas invading Israel, so to speak, and then Israel retaliating. It's all got to trace back to whose land is it, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Is it their land or is it our land? You know, so I think that's like the $1 million question, you know. And I think you're always going to have people asking who's right. You know, who's right? Is it these people or is it that people? And you're always going to have, obviously, one side saying they're wrong and this side saying that they're wrong.
Are any of the killings justified?
This is my thoughts, right? And I shared this on Facebook. I shared this on my status, and I shared with him. I go, if you condemn Hamas, you should condemn Israel. Because, for example, I was sharing on Facebook, I go, there was many people, I seen it, that were condemning Hamas for the rape and the killing of children. But then I was like, wait, Israel did the same thing. They bombed Gaza and children died. So
I've got a different view.
Whether it was intentional or not, the fact of the matter is that people are dying. Children are dying. So if you condemn one, condemn the other. That's the way I'll see it. If you condemn one, you condemn the other.
I wouldn't. Okay. Sorry, wait. Let me reword this properly. Okay?
Someone clipped that.
Yeah. So this is what I mean by that. None of the killings are justified. Killing of civilians is
not justified.
It's not justified. Yeah. And people are going to go to war if one country bombs another place, then obviously there's going to be conflict there and they're going to retaliate. So it's understandable. But at the same time, there's a difference between collateral damage and people purposely going out to rape and kill children. And I don't say that in a way where it's more justified. Death is death and it shouldn't happen. But for somebody to start the conflict, this is going to get a bit messy because obviously this didn't just start on October 7th. This started decades ago. So I do understand that. But to have this type of raid that happened, blowing up the walls and paragliders flying in over the top and mowing people down, and to purposely go in from some of the videos that we've seen, it's to go in and purposely kill women, children. I can't say that that's the same as Israel purposely trying to kill women and children. And look, their attacks are focused on Hamas. I do get that. And there's going to be collateral damage. Again, none of it's justified. We shouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know the way of how, I don't know how war works in that sense where, you know, should you just try and get all the civilians out first, or there's a lot of things that they got to take into consideration, which is understandable. You know what I mean? Like, we're not really war generals. We're people on a podcast, right? You know what I mean? So I want to know exactly how to handle the situation, but I don't think it's the same as Israel purposely going into Palestine and trying to kill women and children. So I'll share this as well. Maybe this is going to get a bit more controversial. So
we're going to get cancelled.
I mean, I think we're going to get cancelled one day anyway. So if today's the day, then praise the Lord. So I've seen some footage.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not it's true, maybe somebody out there who watches this, you can clarify this. So apparently, and I've only seen one of the videos, they show children videos. This is cartoons. They show them videos of Palestinians killing Jews. And it's very much kind of taught in their culture. And it's a part of what they learn. And I'll just say it's a part of their culture. And so I've heard this numerous times, and again, I had my own experience, what I shared earlier. But to see a video of a cartoon that pretty much advertises that. Oh, that's you know what I mean. Like, this is a children's cartoon. You know what I mean. Like, we shape the culture. What we do now in this world, and this is why the left they're very smart.
Mm.
To bring in all these ideologies, the leftist ideologies, what they do is that they pretty much target all the schools from the young age to the universities, because they know that the older people pretty much have their opinion formulated in their mind already.
Exactly.
They're already set in their ways.
Yeah.
So they target the young ones. That's why they have safe schooling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we know as well that to make the next generation what we want it to be, we got to start with the children. Yeah. And if we shape the culture in that way, the children are going to grow up hating the Jews. I mean, to go to a school where just so many Muslims hated Jews, maybe it's changed now. This was just my own personal experience at school. It makes me wonder, like, why? Is it just what has been taught at home? When I looked at a bit of history as well, apparently there have been a lot of moments where they tried to sign a peace treaty, where they tried to live amongst each other, and just to see if there was any way that they could live together in harmony, so to speak. One of the things that I had come across was when they tried to sign a peace treaty, there was these, from what I've seen, there was 3 no's that they had kind of pushed forward. This was like, I don't know which nation it was.
What do you mean by 3 no's?
So it's no peace,
okay,
no recognition, and no negotiations. And that was since I think 1940-ish. In that times, I think after they became a nation again, Israel's independence.
Yeah.
And that's been pretty much the basis of what they've lived off.
Yeah.
We want the land, but we don't want to have peace. We don't want to have negotiations. We don't want to have recognition.
So that was Israel?
No, that was the other side, the Arab nations.
Other side. Oh, gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
that was their attitude.
I haven't looked into that enough to see if that's true, but apparently it's documented as well.
Yeah.
So they're saying that Israel has said, yes, we presented it, and I agreed to it, but then the other side has said, nah, I don't agree with it. If they're going to take the land, they want the land. They don't want Jews occupying the land at all.
They want it completely. Yeah.
They really want to occupy the land. They want nothing. They don't want to live alongside them. And to be honest with you, to a degree, I think that's wisdom as well. Because the conflict has been for so long, it doesn't make sense to try and make a peace treaty with people that they have only grown up to hate. They've only been taught from a young age to hate the Jews. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I remember I seen a podcast and the guy was sharing about, he makes a statement.
Yep.
And he goes, it's impossible for Jews and Muslims to live in peace and harmony in one place. And he was making this statement, and what he was pointing to was, he was saying that with Hamas, they're the real Muslims. He was saying because these are people who go by the book, by the line.
Because they said that about ISIS too.
Yeah, but ISIS as well, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, like there are verses that can give the indication, where he talks about, Jews and Christians are the losers, and he calls us losers, and he calls us, and he talks about waging war against them, so it's like, he makes that, like, he just makes that statement, like saying, man, they can't have peace, especially when they have to follow their religion, right? So it kind of makes sense, like when you're saying no peace, and it's like, okay, there are Islamic countries, so obviously they can't.
Yeah,
especially with Jews as well, So it's.
But it's funny. This will bring me to my next point as well. Like, what does that mean for Christians? So the prophecy of them becoming a nation again, that's spoken about and it's come to pass. So what does that mean for Christians today? Is there any kind of prophecy that the Bible talks about where it kind of leads us into today's conflict? Daniel chapter 9. Verse right at the end, the last few verses, it talks about peace before the destruction comes. Now, from the understanding, the Antichrist is going to be there, and there's going to be a peace treaty that's signed. Now, this is something that we've got to take into consideration as well. The only reason for a peace treaty is because there's war.
There's war, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't want to sign a peace treaty if everyone's getting along well.
There's no point.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so with this conflict, this is the biggest one since the Holocaust of that many people dying in one day. So this is what was reported on the news quite a lot. So they say that there hasn't been this many deaths of Jews in the one day since the Holocaust. And so you look at things like that. There is Syria, Lebanon, on the borders, northern border and on the east side. They're kind of like throwing their little 5 cents as well, rockets firing into Israel as well. So it makes you wonder, like, if this war goes any bigger, if this war grows any bigger and it escalates in a way where the world's going to get involved, United States, Australia, whoever else, then at some point, somebody's going to bring in some kind of peace treaty.
Peace treaty, yeah.
And the person who brings that in will be hailed as a Messiah.
Yeah, gotcha.
You know what I mean? And he's not going to obviously say that he's the Antichrist. Devil doesn't turn up with a pitchfork and horns. He's going to come in like an angel of light. And so for peace to happen, there has to be so much conflict around the world in order for the world to come into an agreement that we need to bring peace. And so with the way that this war is, in the direction that this war is heading, if this escalates any further, we could see ourselves heading towards a peace treaty being signed, around the world and some kind of agreement. And the person that brings this in, we'd have to look from a biblical perspective. This is the Antichrist. This is the person that people will hail as a hero because he brought wisdom to the conflict that's happening right now in this world. That's where we are right now. That's what I believe. You know what I mean? Looking at a biblical timeline, before anything else happens after that, this peace treaty needs to be signed in order for the next stages to happen after that. Now, people talk about rapture, before the Great Tribulation. Whether or not there's rapture, I don't think that really matters. What matters is the tribulation period is going to start. It's going to start anyway, whether you believe it's pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, the Great Tribulation. And once that kicks in, that kicks in, according to the Bible, when the peace treaty is signed. Then we have a bit of an idea, when this could be a lot closer than we think. Then we have a bit of an idea of what's happening in the biblical timeline. If we know that the peace treaty is going to be signed, it says 3.5 years of peace and then 3.5 years of destruction. Yeah. Now there's a lot. There's obviously so much that goes into this. Yeah. But just for those who don't know the Bible as much and don't really delve into eschatology, maybe that's something that you can look into as well. Revelation chapter 16 to 18, that talks a lot about the armies. I think it's Revelation chapter 16, talks about the armies of the world, or the governing nations of the world, the kings of this world, coming together against God's people, the day of Armageddon. I mean, look, this can, the magnitude of this war, I believe, will kind of dictate, or not dictate, but it will kind of show us where we are in the biblical timeline. You know what I mean?
So it shows Christians where we are. That's what it means for Christians. When we see these wars, this is what it's telling you. This is where we are with the timeline. But like, didn't Trump try this, the peace treaty? Like you seen him going to Russia, meeting up with Putin. He went to North Korea. He went and met up with them, China. He was like that man that was journeying to all these. Yeah, well he got along with people. I mean, he got along with the leaders that, the former presidents weren't able to get along with. And so he had his, he's that dude. Maybe he's the guy that comes back into office. A lot of people were voting for him to come back. And, people were prophesying about him as well. And I don't know, I probably wouldn't go that far to prophesy to see if he was the Antichrist. I'm not saying that it could be wrong. It's a possibility. I had a theory about it.
What's the theory on it?
So, when Revelation talks about the beast and it talks about how he had a wound and it was healed in front of everyone. My little theory was that everyone expected Trump to be the president.
Oh, dang. Okay, I'm here.
They expected Trump to be the president, but then he wasn't. So then after Joe Biden, he'll probably get reinstated, and that's that wound being healed. He gets reinstated.
Do you reckon there's a possibility that Trump could be the dude?
I don't know.
I mean, if we were to look at it, right, because America's got one of the greatest influences in the world, especially media-wise. They are professionals in this game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they occupy the skies like nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it comes to, I mean, Russia's up there as well. You know, when it comes to airplanes and satellites and all that kind of stuff. So they've got their eye on pretty much everything. You know what I mean? So you know the movie Eagle Eye? That's them. Anyhow, I mean, look, there's a possibility that it could be someone from there. It's just got to be someone who's going to bring some kind of peace to the. You know what? I mean, I guess going off some videos, and look, there's no conspiracy or anything here, but it is a possibility that it could be. And the reason why I share that is because if he was able to do that in his 4 years of his presidency, and to be able to like connect with North Korea and Vladimir Putin, and to be able to talk to these guys and shake hands with them after none of the other presidents
could do that. Yeah.
They kind of sat in their, in their bulletproof cars and didn't really say anything. They just spoke through Zoom or whatever it was. But he made moves.
Yeah.
So what if he does come back into what if he does get elected again? I mean, I'd have to assume that it's a possibility that he could be the guy that brings peace into this conflict.
Yeah.
Because when's the election?
It should be soon. I think Joe Biden's 4 years should be finishing up soon.
2020, so 2024.
I think it should be up
2024.
Soon. So that's next year. It's around the corner.
And I can't see this war ending anytime soon, because with the way that people are responding around the world. Now, check this out, right? I want to show you something. For those listening at home, I want to show you a bit of a picture. This is how some people are responding. To me, that's disgusting. So I don't know if everyone at home can see this image, but there's an image here. This is what Black Lives Matter posted, right? So Black Lives Matter posted this, and then they took it down because of the backlash. Now, over there, I don't know if you can see, it says, "I stand with Palestine," and it's got a picture of a paratrooper with the Palestinian flag.
Okay.
And this was from Black Lives Matter. Can you see that on the screen now?
Gotcha.
And so they very quickly took this down and everything. And I don't know, like the response from the left has been pretty much that. I looked at a few posts and people from different universities, those with their leftist ideologies. That's tough, you know what I mean? Because the picture that they put up, this was how they flew into Israel to gun down all those people. So why would you put this type of picture up and then say, "I stand with Palestine"? What a messed up organization. Black Lives Matter. That's such a messed up organization. If you're a part of this Black Lives Matter, get out of there. Yeah. That's stupidity.
Bunch of hypocrites, to be honest. Black Lives Matter. We're going to start another podcast.
We're going to start a whole new podcast when it comes to this Black Lives Matter.
But the thing, even with something that got my attention, with the support that Israel's getting from all the countries, celebrities standing with Israel. And there was a photo I seen, whether it's still up or not. It was DJ Khalid. If that's how you say it. Khalid. So he's Muslim himself. His name is DJ Muhammad something.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, and he had, whether it's, I think it was on his Twitter, on his Instagram, whether it's still up or not, I don't know. But he says, "I stand with Israel." And so it was like, it made me question, like, obviously it's not a fact or anything, but it's like,
why is he standing with them when all the Muslims are standing against
exactly
them?
Like, why are the celebrities, they're on Israel's side? It's like, why is the mainstream media?
Do you think that the opinion was formulated from a personal one, or was it just because of the cancel culture?
It could be the cancel culture, to be honest.
You'd have to. It's a wild assumption, but
yeah, I got no facts to back it up. But it's just like, it's obviously like the Muslims are very hard when it comes to standing with Palestine. I remember on Instagram seeing a lot of Muslims, like they come out, "I stand with Palestine," and they, putting up all this history, putting up all these things as well, like with the death toll that's happening with the children, they're putting all this information up, right? That's how I seen the information. That's what made me look into the information. So it's like for this celebrity to come out and things like, oh, it's...
So what do you reckon? I mean, when we were at Outreach on Friday, I spoke to this girl. She's from Russia, and she's Muslim as well. And I asked her about the conflict. What are your thoughts on it? And her first reaction was, well, obviously I stand with Palestine. I said, okay. And, I didn't want to push too much. I said, why is that? I just wanted to ask her, what's your view? What's your understanding? And she gave a little bit of history. She didn't know too much about it. And she just spoke about the land. And I don't think, she was a bit ignorant on the matter.
Okay. Yeah.
But it also made me question as well, you're only going to stand with them because of what you've learned. And would you condemn the attacks that came from Hamas into Israel? And this seems to be a common question that you see. I don't know if you watch the news as well. When they question someone from Palestine, that very question always comes out: do you condemn the attacks of Hamas and this and that? And then people who are trying to stand for their people as well from Palestine, they're a bit hesitant, only because there's a lot more to the conflict than they think. So giving this type of question and not allowing a bit more conversation around the matter, it makes it a bit more messy, because you're on a 2-minute segment and you're not expected to, like we've been speaking now for 40 something minutes and we're even trying to cover everything. You can't. There's so much history behind it. So you can't cover that in a 2-minute segment. And so to pose that question from someone from to someone from Palestine, I think it's unfair. Because they need time to nuance their answer.
Exactly.
If you're gonna give a question that's got so much history behind it, how are you gonna just say yes and then not get any context behind it? You know what I mean? So
like the guy on Outreach on Friday, he was asking me a question and I went to explain the answers, like, no, yes or no. Like, he wanted a yes or no. I was like, right, let me explain. It's like, no, yes or no. It's simple.
For me personally, I don't like answering questions like that, because when people dictate the way that I have to answer, I won't entertain it.
A
lot of times people will say something and they expect you to answer in a certain way. It's like, no, I'll answer the way I want to. And if this was on the news, like, oh, we've only got 1 minute, so I'd rather not answer. And I think sometimes people fear the backlash. I think sometimes people fear the opinions of what people may say, so they give an answer just for the sake of giving an answer. But then they get backlash anyway. If it's not from their own people, it's people from the other side. So
what if I was to ask you, do you condemn what Hamas done?
Yes.
Absolutely. What if I flip it the other way around? Oh yeah, obviously you gotta. I've just done a Piers Morgan on you.
You just asked me the question, you ran away, you didn't allow me to. I mean, look, I think it's a bit different now, because we've been able to share a bit of history and kind of what's been happening. We're sharing an update on the war so far from October 7th till now. Having a bit more evidence, then you understand why you would condemn the attacks, because a lot of these civilians had nothing to do with it. You're not in the air bombing Israel. Your purpose is going out with guns and rockets and grenades or whatever, and you're aiming towards people. Whereas vice versa, they're bombing from the air. Again, not justified, but there's going to be some casualties involved in that as well. So yeah, I think there's a very big difference in collateral damage and you purposely going out to shoot a child in the head. You know what I mean? Like, I'd condemn that any day of the week. So none of that's justified. A lot of the videos they put up themselves, they put up videos as well for those who haven't seen it. It's very graphic. There's videos of a woman who was half naked at on the back of a truck, and I'm not going to show it here. You guys can go out and look for it yourselves if you want to see it. But there's a video of a woman who's half naked in the back of a truck, and it seems like she's been raped, but her legs are all mangled. And it's just twisted the other way, and they're gathering around the back of the ute, and they're all cheering. No one's saying stop the violence, or no one's like, they're cheering over this dead body and they're celebrating this. You see things like that. How do you justify that video? How do you justify, I mean, like, unless somebody has an answer and there's, you know, there's a conspiracy behind it or whatever, how do you justify, and these guys, the people from, you know, Hamas is actually uploading this content.
Yeah, they put up this songs, yeah.
You know what I mean? And stealing women away and taking them into Gaza. And there's a woman, there's a video of a woman who she gets taken from the back of a Jeep, I think it is, and she gets walked into the front of the Jeep, and the back of her pants is just all blood. So you'd have to assume that she either got shot there or she was raped, like vigorously.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because there's just all blood around just that area of her pants. And so the target wasn't just the people that the government. The target was clearly any Jew you see on site, kill them.
Kill him. Yeah.
And it was obvious through the death toll. When you aim the gun at someone, you can withdraw from it or you can purposely kill someone. And so for whole families, mothers, girls, children to be killed the way that they were, it's not justified.
Yeah.
It's not justified.
So with Israel's one, you would say it's justified. You wouldn't condemn Israel's retaliation.
Look, I think there's different perspectives here as well. As a Christian, you don't want, I mean, you wouldn't advocate for any kind of war.
Yeah.
But from a logical perspective as well, for people to come into your town and to rape and kill and steal and make people hostages, you're calling for conflict. You know what I mean? Like, you're asking for people to come and wage war with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, like, again, if people aren't Christians, then the standard's still going to apply. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth.
Yeah.
That standard's going to apply. You know what I mean? Like, these are people who are living under the law. Israel, obviously, they're living under that rule. They live under that same understanding. If they attack us, we're going to attack them back. The rule isn't to go and attack them. The rule is defend yourself. And eye for eye, tooth for tooth.
Yeah.
So according to the law, they're justified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
According to the law, they're justified in that sense. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's true. I think it's always going to be messy when. But I think, to be fair as well, with before they had retaliated, they had given him the heads up. They told him to evacuate. Apparently, they even dropped down a lot of flyers from the sky.
Yep, they had an evacuation point to go through. Yep.
Telling everyone to go and everything. I don't know how long they gave him. I don't know how
it said 24 hours, but I think they extended that time.
Oh, so it was more. Okay, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, so
the last time I saw you.
Like, to put it into perspective, I think it's not saying that we justify children dying. We don't, but it was retaliation, and it's a much different situation with what Hamas done, purposely and intention and not having the intention, two different things.
I would like to sit with those who are supporting Palestine. Not so much to debate them, but just to understand why
they reckon
what's
it's
their
justified.
reasons, why they think it's justified. If it's just because, I mean, we've got to understand as well. They've been in a the Gaza Strip is tiny. It's like it's very populated, 2.something million people that are there. I mean, it's hard to say that that many people who are living in such a dense area, like, you know, the population is so big, but it's such a small area of land for people to try and live off. I think from what I had seen, there's probably 40 or 50% of people that are that don't work.
Yeah.
That what's it called again? Anyways, yeah. So they're not working, they're not earning any kind of income. Again, I don't know how true that is, but they're in a place where it seems like when the world looks in from the outside, it seems like they're under great stress because the supplies that go through there aren't enough and the population is only growing. So obviously they want more land, and again, the conflict is much wider than that. So what are Israel going to do for them to share the land? And if that's true, the whole no peace.
Yeah.
What was it again? Let me just
The 3 no's, no peace.
the 3 no's. If they say there's no peace, no negotiations, and no recognition.
Yeah.
I mean, like if that kind of document for somebody to put that in the document,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's the way that you want to have peace, for the Jews to have no recognition,
Mm-hmm.
like what's your immediate thoughts when you hear that? You want it to be wiped out from the face of the earth? Like you don't want it to be recognized as a nation
as
at
a
all?
nation and as a people, yeah.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's pretty big, you know what I mean? So what do you think
It's,
about that?
it's big statements, to be honest, and like just going off the information that's posed forth and everything, because I shared with you before the podcast, I invested a lot of my time trying to look into it from the lens of the Palestinians.
Yeah.
Wanted to understand, because obviously everyone is jumping on board with Israel. I stand for Israel and everything. So I was like, okay, let's see what the other side is saying. And it seems like a lot of it does, like what you were sharing, it stems from what they were taught growing up. Look, I'm Muslim, they're Jews. Okay, this is what I was taught from them. And to hear the information about the 3 no's, it makes sense, especially knowing the information that comes out of their book or their Quran and everything. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense. There is a segregation between the two. So it's...
Mohammed Hijab had quite a big response. It seemed a bit emotional. You know what I mean? In the way that he addressed it.
It was, but I understood.
Do you sympathize with him?
In a sense, because a lot of people were emphasizing on what Hamas was doing and everything, but then there was kind of like the blind eye to the children dying in Gaza. Apparently now the death toll for children is now up to like 600. It's like,
yeah, I heard it was big.
Yeah, he's like 600 children. Is like, and like there's no emphasis on that and how much children.
Should they? I think again we're speaking from a podcast. We're not there as in making the decisions, but would it have made more sense to clear the civilians out of the way first before bombing? Or do they just go in because of they have to strike now?
Yeah,
I wouldn't know how to explain that. You know what I mean? Like they're doing it now anyways.
Mm-hmm.
They're evacuating the civilians. So why not do that first? Why wasn't that the first option? You know what I mean? And so like if the death toll of children is up to 600, that's big. I mean, it could have been avoided.
I know. I was watching a video this morning, and it was a Palestinian man. When they were getting told to evacuate, he made a strong stance. He goes, "I'm not evacuating. I'm not going nowhere. I'm going to die here." So I think, why didn't they evacuate their civilians? I think, look, I'm not an expert when it comes to war and military. It would be hard to know who's friendly and who's not friendly. You know what I mean? It's kind of like...
Yeah, it is. I mean they'd have to, in some way, regulate that. They'd have to put them in an area, maybe inside of Israel, make sure that no one comes in with weapons or any kind of vests, obviously, and then keep them somewhere where they can still feed them and clothe them until they can figure out this whole... look, easier said than done.
Yeah, exactly.
This is like, I think,
Exactly.
I don't know what the civilian count is, but it'd be over 1 million easily.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's going to be people that they're evacuating from hospitals. It's going to be hard for them to take them from one hospital to another. There's going to be elderly people. There are infants. It's tough.
It is.
It's a bit of a tough call. Those who are, if you've just recently joined in, if you have questions on the matter, we'd love to talk more about it. If you can, those who are tuning in, hit that like button, because we are trying to send this message as far as wide as possible. Hopefully we don't get cancelled. You know what I mean? So if you can do that, if you can like this video, that'd be great. So this, again, like I've shared before, this helps the video to spam out as far and wide as possible, and it'll help the algorithm trigger those who don't yet maybe understand this and where we are on the biblical timeline, where we are and where we could possibly be leading towards. And look, to be honest with you, that could be scary for a lot of people, especially if you're not walking around. Now think about it. Jews have been facing extinction for a very long time.
Yeah.
But yet it's a miracle because you look at what it says as well in the book of Isaiah. Now get this right. This is a bit of a. This is what it says. It says, let me just pull up my notes. It says, the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 7 to 8. Before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came upon her, she delivered a son. Who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall a land be born in one day? Shall a nation be brought forth in one moment? For as soon as Zion was in labor, she brought forth her children. Now, know this, May 14th, 1948, it was born in the one day. Again, this was the prophecy that came to pass.
I see, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure,
So it gives you an exact date of when they became a nation again.
Yeah.
And so this is why I want to bring this up, because a lot of people might just, that means something else. That might mean this, that might mean that. I mean, so a bit more time into eschatology and you might see the biblical timeline.
Yeah.
But understand this as well. If this war is going to be the very thing that brings forth that peace treaty, then we are much closer than what people think.
Yeah.
I think people need to understand that as well. I mean, if there's ever a time for people to start getting right with the Lord, it's now.
It's now.
You know what I mean? And look, I'm very hesitant when I say that as well. Because you're going to have people who come to the Lord because they're fearful of, Jesus might be back soon and I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time to get right with the Lord. And to a degree, maybe if it works, then it works. But then you got people who are serving God out of fear of hell, but not fear and reverence to God.
Exactly.
It's a very big difference, you know what I mean? Because God sees the intentions of the hearts. And so we need to know as well as Christians, if we're drawing closer to that time, I mean, Christians themselves, we need to have a bit more urgency. We need to have a bit more urgency in sharing the gospel. And I think people have become so hardened to a point where it's like, that's not what it means.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll come later.
Yeah.
They've been talking about end times for years now. Maybe that's not it. Do you really want to be caught up in a time where you're not serving? Do you really want to be that servant that is beating the other servants and then your Lord comes back finding you doing nothing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we got to understand that as well. It's not a scary message, so you better get back on track. I think we're a lot closer than what people think, especially knowing about what we talked about with AI technology, the possibility of Mark of the Beast. It's all coming together now. Yeah, like to be honest with you, on a global scale, there aren't things that haven't happened like this in all of history. Same thing that's happening right now. I mean, the conflict between, Israel and the Arab nations, that's been happening for decades. But for it to be on this scale and possibly be, blow up to bigger proportions, there's something to be said there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I've always been iffy as well, like when we say to Christians, now is the time to get right. It's now the time to get right.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying. Like I've shared this in the past, and I've shared this to many backsliders. If you're so focused on the times and the seasons, and that's the reason why you come back to the Lord, then your love for Christ is going to be for a season because you're so focused on the season.
Ooh, seasonal love.
Exactly. So that's why I was going to post it on Facebook. This was when it started happening. I was like, man, the end times, like now's the time to get right. But I was like, let me just slow down. But on the other hand, as well, exactly what you were saying. I didn't want to be that, we've seen this before. I remember hearing that when we were younger, when I think there was talks about war, and I heard some of our aunties that would be like, we've heard that a lot. Obviously because they've lived longer, so they've they hear about more wars. So I was like, okay, it's probably just a normal thing. But it's not. I think when these things happen, it's not a normal thing. It's signs for Christians.
Give us your views. Give us your questions on the matter. If any of you guys have a question on the matter that we're discussing right now with the whole Israel-Palestine conflict that's happening right now as we speak on the other side of the world in the Middle East, I mean, come Lord Jesus.
Maranatha.
You know what I mean? And let's not be ashamed about it. If the Lord's return is imminent and it's much sooner than what people think, embrace it. And you're only fearful when you're not serving. Let me give it to people that they might be, where they may be able to relate. When you're working at work, you have no fear of your boss walking past. If anything, it'd be nice if they walk past and they see you working hard. It's like, yes, yeah, I look like the mad worker. But have you noticed that if you are at work, then you stop working and you're talking to a mate and you guys are just hanging out when you're supposed to be working, you're a lot more
trying
kind of
something to do,
looking around. Or you're looking around to see if the boss is going to walk past.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're a lot more fearful because you know that you're not doing the task that you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so people understand this concept. You know what I mean? Like people do it naturally. And so when people have some kind of feel of, oh, the Lord's return could be a lot sooner than we think, then they start to work. And look, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It could be good. This could be the turning point. This could be the pivot that somebody needs to come back to the Lord, and it could be genuine.
Mm-hmm.
But just be careful is what I'm saying. So, any questions? Did you get a question there?
I just had someone that texted me personally.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, this was their question. They go, can Christians join the battle to fight Hamas?
Wait, can Christians join the battle
to fight Hamas?
What's the reasoning?
That was just no,
I think I'm just putting it out there, just in general. What's the reasoning behind it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because we have to be doing everything with purpose, with intention.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Bible is very clear on what we should be doing, what our purpose is. Once we receive the kingdom of God, once we receive salvation, we want to be able to give that to others. I mean, if you have intention to go and bring people to salvation, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
If that's your conviction from the Lord, maybe. But if you just want to go because you want to start spraying people in the face, I don't think that's justified. You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to limit the amount of people that die, and we're trying to increase the amount of people that get saved. Mm-hmm. Like, there's got to be purpose and intention behind everything that you do. You know what I mean? So, I mean, can I go and preach the gospel in the nightclubs? You can, but is that really your intention, or do you want to go and check out some girls or whatever?
Yeah.
Again, everything has to have some kind of intent to it, because that's what God sees, the intentions of a person's heart. Mm-hmm. So can a person join the conflict? Yeah. I don't think it'd be wise to.
It'd be wise to, yeah.
You know what I mean? To be joining the conflict, because what's your purpose? Yeah. You know what I mean? Unless somebody has a real genuine purpose as to why, then might be like that guy in Hacksaw Ridge.
Desmond.
Is that his name?
Desmond.
You know what I mean? He joined Hacksaw Ridge, and
that's it.
He didn't want to hold a weapon, and his whole purpose was to save people.
Lives, yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's the only war movie that I know where his purpose was never to carry a weapon, but it was only to save lives.
Yeah.
And then people respected him keeping his Sabbath. People respected the way that he served God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's awesome. I think like something like that is awesome, because your intentions are shown and your fruit is very clear. As much as people bullied him throughout the movie, like you see it, he made his intentions very clear. He's there to save lives. He's there to serve God. You know? So
Desmond Doss, he was a part of your favorite church.
You Sevies, you got one great disciple on your hands.
That was an awesome movie.
Yeah. Stop coming for us, Sevies. We love you guys, but some of your doctrine's a bit whack. Just letting you know. Get me more in trouble.
You're going to get more haters on the comment section.
Yeah. So, anyways, comments. You guys got any questions on the matter? There's a few different things that we're going to be, I guess, other topics in relation to this that we can be sharing in the coming weeks. But so chuck your question into the comment section below. What do you think of those going to? So you know you got Avi.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good, because
with his job, what he does for work, like getting the other side.
Because he's not going as a soldier. He could have gone in as a army reserve.
Yeah.
Because he used to serve. But he's going in as a journalist, so that you can get all views, all sides to it. Now, it might seem biased in some people's eyes, only because he's a Jew, and so he's only going to report on the things that would help his cause for his people.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
That's what made look. I'm a fan of Rebel News. You know, when it came to the COVID lockdowns and everything, they done an awesome job.
Yeah.
But I think my question marks had to pop up because he's Jew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But people going over to Israel, people going over there, like there's one of his videos where people were going over there to help. Whether it's fighting or not, I can't remember if they were, you know how he was talking about the plane was full of people going to Israel. Were they going there to fight or visit? I don't know.
It doesn't look like fights. There was a lot of women and children on board. So it was just a packed plane.
Yeah.
And so I think what he was sharing was he expected the plane to be empty because of the wars that's happening right now. People are trying to get out. Yeah. So to have a packed plane going into Israel was surprising because even when I seen it, he had the cameraman walk behind him and every seat was full. So, okay. So
I mean, it's crazy.
People are going there to support.
Yeah.
And Israel, they've always, the Jews, they've always had that support system with each other, you know what I mean? And even though they were scattered throughout the land, they were, and this was the first time in history that they were scattered the way that they were. We got to understand something as well. If God promised for them to come back together as a nation, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, yeah. No matter how much they scatter. Only God can scatter people and they'll never come back into existence again. Yeah. Now you look at the time of Solomon, because of the great sin that he had committed, what was told is because of his sin, because of what he had allowed with all these women to turn his heart away from God, I'm going to strip 10 of the tribes away from you. And so they've never come back into existence ever since they were taken away. You've only got the 2 tribes that he said, one for your father's sake, David, and one for Israel's sake. And so he shares this prophecy. Not long after that, 10 tribes get taken away, and you've only got the 2.
And they're called the lost tribes.
These are the lost tribes, and these are where those Hebrew Israelites claim, no, we are the tribe of Reuben, we are the tribe of Naphtali, we are, and the real Jesus is black. I've never heard such rubbish. I've covered this a few times, and I don't want to spend more time on it. More necessary time than what's needed, So again, when you say things like that as well, people will somewhat believe it because the tribes are lost. Of course, you can make up stuff. Yeah. Now, this is where they really are. And look at, here's a clue in the Bible and so on and so on. When God takes away and scatters nation, when it comes to pass, you can't find them anymore. You can't find it. Yeah, so these people who are trying to claim that they are the lost tribes of Israel, fake news.
Lies.
And so the world has tried to do the same thing as well with the amount of anti-Semitism that's happened in this world for the longest time. They've scattered the people. They were about 20 centuries without their homeland. It's a long time to not be a nation. And so they've been scattered mainly amongst the Europeans and European countries and North Africa. To be scattered to that degree and then to come together as a nation, man, that's crazy. For 20 centuries, like how do you even fathom that? That just goes to show that when God spoke something and he said that, that the people would never, that they will come together as a nation again, never before has it been done in history. So we got to understand that's a great miracle from God. You know what I mean? So anyways, what's your, did you have a question?
Trying to look now. No questions yet. It's okay, guys. You can ask the questions. It's a touchy subject, to be honest. Yeah. So obviously, depending on which side you stand, you're going to step on a lot of toes, so but it's okay.
But with the facts that we have now, with what we do understand now, we've got to be true to the truth as well. And yes, it's subjective in the sense where some people, they highlight more of the land that's been taken from the Palestinians. If we're going to go off that, they were given a lot of land. And then when Israel came in, they just kind of pushed out the Palestinians, further and further apart. You know what I mean? So, that's, I don't know. That's something that's been looming for a long time. And war was inevitable. And it's been happening for decades, but war was inevitable. But the same way that they've been trying to eliminate the Jews is the same way that in the early church they've been trying to eliminate Christians.
Yeah.
We've been going through the Book of Acts series, and so here's the twist as well. They're now not focused on eliminating Christians. They're more focused on eliminating the doctrines of Christians.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a lot of Christians, especially lukewarm Christians, that'll walk the face of this earth for until Jesus comes back. But Satan, he's smart. He's not trying to kill Christians like back in Nero's time. He's not trying to kill Christians like how it was in the early church. He's more focused on shifting, or he's more focused on a paradigm shift. Like, let's take what they believe in and let's just point it in a bit of a different direction. That way, they're still Christians, but they're not real ones.
They're not real ones.
Let me just plant a few tares amongst the wheat. And then hopefully, if they stay there long enough, we'll have more tares than we do wheat.
Yeah.
Bit touchy, you know what I mean? So
what's that saying? Divide and conquer.
Divide and
That's
conquer.
what it is.
Yes. And it's crazy because, they have tried to do that with Israel. And for me personally, like when I looked into this, I'm fascinated by that. I'm honestly fascinated by the way that they've been able to come back as a nation again. Like that to me just blows my mind away. You know what I mean? And to see prophecy come to pass, those who are tuning in, those who are listening in, understand that the time of Jesus' return is imminent. You know what I mean? So don't grow weary in well doing.
Yeah. Amen.
You know what I mean? Those kind of the conflicts that's happening in this world, we've also got to understand as well that it shouldn't steer us away from Christ. If anything, it should open up our eyes to the situation that's happening and be like, you know what? Maybe, let me just delve a bit deeper into the scriptures. Let me just pray and see what the Lord's trying to show me, because if I'm not serving or if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, maybe this is a bit of an urgency call for you to step more into your calling.
Your calling.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. What's your thoughts?
So, trying to find if there was questions. I got statements, but that's okay. No questions. I was hoping there would be questions, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it might be new to some people.
Yeah.
And I think some people may not understand the conflict as much. And hopefully that's provided a bit of an understanding for those who don't really understand the conflict as much. I'm still learning about it. We're still learning about it.
Sure,
I've been looking a lot more into the history, and we compacted it into a very small segment. But the amount of leaders there has been over time, good leaders, bad leaders, different certain declarations that have been made, and as messy as it is, I honestly do believe that if it's not this one, might be the next war, whatever it may be, this will be the very thing, depending on how big it gets, that'll bring that peace treaty on. Which means this will be the very thing that kickstarts triggers the Great Tribulation.
The Great Tribulation.
And if that triggers the Great Tribulation, we're there.
Yeah.
We're right there. Everything that's that Daniel chapter 9. If you read Daniel chapter 7, 8, and 9, Daniel chapter 7 and 8 talks a lot about the mark of the beast system, and it describes the horns and the kings and whatnot. But then Daniel chapter 9 is a lot more specific to the timeline. Daniel chapter 9 is a lot more specific to the peace and then sudden destruction. The Antichrist. When the Antichrist steps on the scene, what's it going to look like? It's going to look like an angel of light.
Angel of light.
That's honest truth. He's going to look like an angel of light. You know what I mean? So, anyhow, praise the Lord. You want to read out?
Yeah, I'll read this one. It says, the Amaleks waged an unprovoked attack on Israel after crossing the Red Sea, and Israel went to war with them. God vowed to blot them out from under heaven. Exodus 17 verse 14. Wouldn't this be the same?
Yes. Oh, this is the Amalekites.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this was when they were crossing over to go into the Promised Land, and there was an unprovoked attack. The Amalekites, and that was like that's a good point as well, because that was a constant war with the Amalekites, and God did. Like he promised, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the earth. I'm using different terms right now, but that's
and they did. It was
I'm
children and
utterly
everything.
destroy them or annihilate them.
The children, the cattle, and everything. Was it that one you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, like, this is not just a one-time thing that it happened, because it happens as well with who was it? Even within the children of Israel.
Mm.
And I think God also was showing as well, like, this is a bit unrelated, but I'll just share it anyway. When there was sin in the camp, you know, the story of Achan or Akan, or however you say his name, what was destroyed? It was him, wife, children, goats, and, you know, their young, whatever was related to them. Same thing that happens with Jezebel. They go and Jehu goes over, kills off Ahab's bloodline. And the last one to get killed is Jezebel herself. That was to make sure that there wasn't any evil that still resided within Israel, or you know that came and put them into bondage, or came and attacked them, came and put pressure, whatever it was, on the Israelites.
Yeah.
And so when God, when He had vengeance for His people, for His children, he exacts vengeance in a brutal way sometimes, which we can't. Sometimes it's a bit hard for us to fathom. It's like, oh, but they weren't a part of it as well. And look, I guess people might be listening to this and be like, oh, so God does it as well. Like, why did He wipe out children? Why did He wipe? And this has been a common question, right?
Yeah.
This is going to get us into a bit of muddy waters. There's always been a question that people ask: are any of these killings justified? Because if we're saying that it's not justified with what Hamas has done on Israel, what about what God had done on those, you know, whether the Canaanites, the Amalekites, the Midianites, whoever they may be?
The genocide, apparently in the Old Testament.
The genocide, yes. Yeah. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
I've done a study up here in Brisbane. I touched on that, the genocide in you know how we see the flood. People will be like, oh, where's God's grace in the flood?
Yeah.
Even that one, when God told, was it David, or to wipe out the Amaleks, wipe them all out, and everything's like, okay, like, how do you answer those questions? You know, like this genocide, you know, children and all, you know. Obviously, it's need a whole different podcast to answer these questions, the genocide and everything, but there are answers to those questions, I truly believe. I believe that it's the God of the Old Testament and New Testament is the same God, and He has answers, you know. So obviously I can't answer it now just because of time's sake. I don't want to give half an answer because it's going to sound so off if I give half an answer. But
can you give a taste?
This is what I can say: is the assumption is that those children, the children that died, go to hell. They don't. This was the thing, that if those children were to grow up with evil around them, what's going to happen to the children once they get the understanding what they're doing is wrong? They're going to die, go to hell, burn forever, because they grow to an age where they're now held accountable.
What about the women?
The women. What do you mean? What about the women?
What about like the mothers of the children?
So it would be the same thing. Like there's an age of accountability, right?
And do you reckon because they were under their husband as well?
It would be the same for example. It's obviously we're all like in the New Testament it says that where there's no law, there's no transgression, right? And it's the same way. We're held accountable for the things that we do wrong. I think where people point to most is the children. Be like, man, children as well. They killed children, but what did the children do? They're like they're innocent. And
it is a natural reaction because it's the innocence of children. Yeah,
of course, but like they're children, they're not held accountable for anything, and obviously they'll be, because they're not held accountable. Where there's no sin, there's no transgression, right? So that's what I was sharing with the guys in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
So if the children were to grow up, they'll get to an age where they're held accountable for their actions, and if they were to die in the state of sin, then that's in eternity in hell. You know, so in a nutshell, that's what it is that we assume, man, it's so brutal, but it's like, wait, that's not the end for the children. That's not the end. You know, getting killed is not the end. It's so brutal to people who don't believe in life after death. Yeah. You know, it sounds so brutal, but the way that I see it is those children, they haven't reached an age of accountability. You know, so that's in a nutshell, you know, so I think even in regards to that as well, there's always reasons as to why God does everything. I mean, there's always going to be questions. Why did you do that, God? You know what I mean? Like even when you look at the topic of predestination, which we need to revisit again because of what happened, technical difficulties. But
it says in Romans chapter 9, why did you make me like this? Like, we shouldn't be saying to God, why did you make me like this?
Romans 9.
Because there's a lot of things in the Bible, when we look at it from our horizontal perspective, we can't fathom it. It seems so wrong. Logically, it's wrong. We might look at scriptures and say, this goes against scriptures. I mean, we say the same thing with a lot of the different topics. We might say, you might look at Hosea and Gomer's story and be like, well, that's not justified. You know what I mean? Like, he's marrying a whore.
Yeah.
If to put it into terms like that, but he's marrying someone that's a prostitute.
Yeah.
His ways are higher than ours. It's hard to fathom sometimes why God does things, but we can't fathom it sometimes because he's given us mercy, grace, and we understand these concepts of his love and justification. And so when you see that type of behavior happen in the Bible that you think that's genocide or whatever it may be, God doesn't ever do things without reason. There's always a reason to it. And just because we don't know it, it doesn't mean that it's incorrect. You know what I mean? So it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough for people to try and understand that. So, if there's no any more questions, did you have anything else that you wanted to share on that?
I got no more questions on this side here. No more questions now. But it is I agree. Like, I think that's what troubled me as well with the the whole genocide and everything, and even with just predestination, it is troubling. But honestly, end of the day, we got to take the Bible for what it is. If it's written, it's written. That's it. Put feelings and emotions to the side.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of what we can share now is this war. The conflict is getting big.
Yeah.
And it could be on a scale that's that might be unfathomable. It might be on a scale that we can't comprehend right now. It might be a lot bigger. And if this is the case, again, don't just write it off as things like this have happened before. You don't want to be caught in a time where you're sleeping, which the Bible talks about. That's one of the things that you want to be careful of. You don't want to be that lazy servant that got caught sleeping, that got caught lacking. Lack of a better term. A lot of youngies like to use that term.
Lacking. You
don't want to be, you don't want to get caught lacking. And so when I say that, I mean this in the most sincere way. The return of Jesus, and a lot of people might not want to talk about it, it's inevitable. And it's going to happen. And so if you're going to be in a place where you're caught sleeping and you weren't watching, it's going to be like the church of, I think, I might be wrong, like the church of Sardis. One of their biggest downfalls was because they weren't watching. So you don't want to be that church, because there are 7 churches as well that talks about different types of Christians. To put it into simple terms, you don't want to be the type of Christian that gets so comfortable in the Spirit of God or whatever it may be that you're not watching anymore. And you try to depend on other people and other groups that you might be tied to, that you might tie yourself to a group that isn't watching. There's a lot more to it than that. But I'll say this. I do believe that this is a warning. I do believe that if God is trying to show us something and something is going to happen, something is looming, there is this conflict could be bringing on the Great Tribulation. You want to be in the right place. So if you're not in the right place right now, surrender your life to Jesus, or bring your life back to Jesus, and understand that salvation is only in Jesus. And we could say that till we turn blue, but unless you embrace that, then again, you don't want to be caught lacking. You know what I mean? So understand that the times that we're in, this could be something that scales to a lot bigger than we think. And I pray that you guys have been edified by this. Again, if you can, like and subscribe to the channel. Let this go out to as many people as possible so we can share the message every Monday to those who don't know the gospel, and for those who do know, and we can discuss topics on a deeper level. But until then, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Be blessed.
Amen.